Welcome to Rooted, Stories of Entrepreneurship and Agribusiness, a podcast from Colorado State University's Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics. I'm your host, Lauren Chenarides. I'm currently an assistant professor of agricultural business at Colorado State University, where I teach a course on agribusiness entrepreneurship. In this podcast series, we explore stories of how people across the food and agriculture industry identify problems, create solutions, and build or improve businesses that make an impact. What makes Rooted unique is that each episode is co-hosted by students in the Agribusiness Entrepreneurship course, who bring their own curiosity and questions to the table. Their conversations with leaders across food and agriculture are a chance to learn, reflect, and share those insights with you, our audience of students, entrepreneurs, and change makers in food and agriculture. I appreciate your time and attention, and I'm excited to share these inspiring stories with you. Awesome. I'm joined today by our student co-hosts, Hudson and Rhys. So here we go. They're both agricultural business majors. And we're joined today by our guest, Bob Welch. After 19 years in media and communications, Bob transitioned his longtime side hustle into a full-time operation. He now manages a 1,400-head summer stocker yearling business in partnership with his two brothers and is co-owner of Welch Cattle Company, a multi-state cow-calf operation with grazing in Colorado and Montana. Locally, he and his wife also manage a small herd of mother cows. Bob continues freelance work in writing and video production, including his recent documentary film, The Cut, which is really neat, I will say. And this particular documentary explores the cutting horse industry. He also serves as editor of Ranch Record, the magazine of the National Ranching Heritage Association. Bob got his roots growing up on a ranch north of Callahan, Colorado, where early exposure to ranch life and storytelling around cow camps inspired him to pursue a degree in journalism. We're really excited to have you here, Bob. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Lauren. I appreciate it. Thank you for the introduction.
Awesome.
Thank you as well for that. And so how I'd like to start out, Bob, with the first question. So you went to Colorado State, and I'd want to know, when did you know, if you knew, that you wanted to go into be an entrepreneur during Colorado State after, or if you were going to use journalism within your business?
Yeah, so when I was here at CSU, I didn't really have any designs on being an entrepreneur per se. I was coming for a journalism degree. My thoughts at the time were I'd like to go work for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, or catch on with a breed association or something like that in their media communications department. So the idea of entrepreneurship while I was in college didn't really hit. I would say after I got out and started my first office job and started missing running cows and being horseback, is when the entrepreneurship thing kind of happened, and I was like, hey, if I want to do this, I need to make it happen for myself, and of course it took from that time it took 15, 16 years to get to the point where I could make my entrepreneurship sort of the main way I spent my time. But yeah, I would say it was pretty quickly after getting an office job, I realized that I couldn't do an office job all day, every day, forever.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah.
When you were growing up, kind of in your family's business, did you fully appreciate, really enjoy it in that later you kind of wanted to come back to it, or if you were kind of like, well, I kind of want to do something different?
No. When I came to Colorado State as a freshman, I left my cowboy hat at home. I was ready to do something different. In fact, when I came as a freshman, I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a sports journalist was sort of the idea. I loved Sports Illustrated growing up, and I thought that'd be cool. Similar to my previous answer, within about 6 months, I was like, no, I'm a cowboy. I'm too country. I can't leave it behind. And so at that point, I joined AGR. It's an ag fraternity here on campus, and got connected back with the agricultural roots that that I had left very briefly.
Yeah.
Was there someone that kind of like said, "Hey, Bob, have you heard about AGR?" Or what was that? Was anybody in particular that reignited that spark? And
Not really. So when I got here, a friend from back home had started a fencing company here, or he had actually bought a fencing company, and he was still a student. And I was working for him building fence. And so I was, and some of those guys were in AGR. And then some of the guys that I had met in the dorms were AGRs. And so we all just kind of naturally happened. And some of the guys I was friends with, we all just rushed together. And that's how it happened.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome.
When you decided you were like, well, I want to be a cowboy again. I want to be an entrepreneur. What made you kind of go back to that kind of family business? Because like you're in business with your two brothers, and what made you kind of want to go back into that? Is it like the family aspect, or just that's kind of what you knew?
Yeah, sure. So I had been in media for about 15 years before I decided to make the flip and really dig into the independent business. But we started the business before I left the media business. We started the family stuff before I left the media business. So I didn't have enough time holding down a full-time job to do all the parts that it would take to run a successful yearling stocker operation. So I approached my brothers and said, hey, I've got some opportunity for some ground here that we could put some cattle out on. Kind of makes sense. My one brother, Andy, kind of makes sense if you could help put the cattle together, because he was down in the Arkansas Valley where those sale barns are. He's more connected. He ran the family ranch that my dad had built, and so he was a little more connected day to day in the business. So he knew where we could get cattle. And then my youngest brother, Wes, he was managing a ranch and still is called the Spade Ranches in Texas, and he is really sharp on the marketing standpoint and the hedging. And now there's all these LRPs, and I was like, and Wes, maybe you could be our marketing guy, and I'll take care of them in the middle. Andy, you buy them. And so that was kind of my vision of how and I think it made sense to them too. And so that was how it happened, because none of us, we all had full-time jobs otherwise. And it started with one load of heifers. So it was real small. And so at that time, that's kind of how we approached it. It's a side hustle for all of us. So that's why I involved the family, because I trusted them and I knew they were good at what they did, and I knew we could work together. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And then for your brothers, now you might have touched on this. I don't know if maybe didn't hear, but did your brothers do they have college degrees?
Yep. So Andy, the middle brother, graduated from CSU, and he was, I think, the first, maybe the second class to go through the Integrated Resource Management program here. And so he's actually got his master's. I think they still call it that. Do they still call it? I
actually don't know. I have to look that up.
Yeah. So they might have changed the name of it by now. But at the time it was called the IRM degree. And then my youngest brother, Wes, graduated from Texas A&M. He had to be different.
Yeah, I was just saying. Yeah. And then I guess to expand more on like the business, because starting business is never easy. What was your biggest struggle? You and your brothers kind of getting into this business. Like what was the thing that you found to be really challenging?
Yeah, I would actually say for us, starting was pretty easy. So I had a little set of cows, and it was 30 or 40 cows, and I think it was the winter of 2001. It was a terribly snowy winter. Like we got a snowstorm on December 20th, and it did not melt until like March 15th.
Oh, wow.
And so all that winter, all I could think about was I'm selling these cows next fall. So so I already had the grass. I already had the place for the cattle. And then, just one load, they were easy to take care of. It was no big deal. Because we'd grown up doing it, all three of us. To answer your question, the hardest thing for me probably wouldn't be the same thing as the hardest thing for other people. I would say the hardest thing for me was making time and juggling my other full-time gig.
Yeah, I mean, so much we see the founders having the side hustle, of it being what they would ultimately pursue as their full-time aspirational career. And at the start, they're having to juggle, responsibilities, whether that's their job, family commitments, other things. And so that sort of that story that you're telling, it seems to be things that we see a lot in the case studies that we study in the class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say that was it.
Yeah. And then to kind of shift kind of more into this idea of your business, we're covering the theme of the next generation of agriculture and kind of what's moving into it and what's the future for it. And what we found is kind of a big topic here at CSU now is sustainability, and kind of what does your business and kind of your community as well do for sustainability, and what you've seen as well, what you think is maybe ideal or something that could be improved on, or what you think is really good.
Yeah. So I realize that sustainability is a big buzzword in agriculture right now, for sure. It kind of has been for 5 or 10 years at this point, I'd say. I probably look at it a little more, I don't want to say cynically exactly, but I want my business to last a long time. I want it to go on, maybe to the next generation if they're interested. So to me, being sustainable is at the core creating a financial plan, framework that works. So in agriculture, what that means is you've got to take care of your resources. Your main resources is land. So I work real hard to develop, I would think, forward-thinking, or at least somewhat progressive grazing protocols. Yeah. And then we're very careful. I would not say we are big risk takers in the market. Like when we have the chance to lock in a profit through hedging or LRPs or whatever program we're using, we usually take it. So we try to do things that way to be sustainable. Raised our kids doing it, so expose them to doing it, so perhaps it can be sustainable to a next generation. I have a unique opportunity, kind of when our stocker yearling operation sort of took its first big jump. Douglas County, the county I live in, it's Castle Rock is Douglas County. They've got, I think they've got somewhere around 10,000 acres of open space, and they were having a lot of trouble keeping the weeds, the invasive noxious weeds, knocked back. And so the director, or I guess he was the assistant director at that time, he had gone through CSU's IRM program as well. And he had the idea to integrate grazing into the open space management. And so he put out a opportunity to get a grazing lease there. And so I was able to, over the years, I've got 2 different leases where the stocker yearlings are through the county open space, and they come to about 4,400 acres together. And they required me to be very, very progressive. We do a high intensity, low duration grazing, rotational grazing plan. And so I wouldn't say forced, because I think I would have done something similar if I could, but I had a good partner help me to be sustainable in that way as well.
Yeah. I mean, sustainability is so cross-cutting. It's, financially sustainable, especially in agriculture where you're talking about generations of families participating in a lot of businesses on production side specifically. And then also sustainability in the sense of, working with partners, thinking about, okay, you had this invasive species come in or they on this particular area of land, what can we do with the community? And that is a sustainability as well, I think, in terms of sustaining partnerships, like you mentioned. So I really, I just want to acknowledge that too, because we hear about sustainability, and, maybe Hudson, you can elaborate on this too of, what does sustainability mean to you? Yeah. What does it mean in terms of, what you're learning? And so we can start to understand, if we know what that definition is, we can create plans about how to make decisions around being sustainably minded.
Yeah. And then to expand a little bit more on that with kind of partnership within sustainability, I know CSU is working with farmers, and they have their own farm, RDEC, and they work with and kind of experiment. And so I wonder for you, Bob, do you or people in your community communicate with Colorado State, other colleges, with any like findings for sustainability or regenerative ag or anything like that? Kind of like, is there anyone, could be you or someone else that you know, working with any college in this sort of area?
Yeah, so I would say not me directly. Unfortunately, I probably should. But like I was saying earlier, the director of the Douglas County Open Space, he had come through CSU, and he had got a lot of the ideas for how he wanted to develop the open space grazing program there in Douglas County through what he learned here at CSU. So that's certainly one connection to CSU in that way. Other than that, we work closely with I work closely with the NRCS program there, USDA office in Douglas, Elbert County, headquartered out of Franktown. And so obviously a lot of their research, a lot of their work comes through the university system. A lot of things that they're promoting have been developed in the university system, not just at CSU, but I think across the country. So there's a lot of connection there, but I would have to say not a direct connection.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, but those are like lots of good resources, like across, the state even, and probably federally too. To tap into.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and then for kind of talking more about this whole with CSU, and you have a degree and your brothers have a degree, but kind of with your business, especially now that it's growing, when you're looking to hire people, it could be for any job, are college degrees something you really take into play when you're looking to hire someone, or is it kind of just an added bonus, you think, when you're looking to hire someone?
Right. So I don't. We run pretty lean. I don't have any hired help at the moment, other than maybe some temporary summertime help. But certainly, a college degree demonstrates a lot of positive things to an employer. For somebody to fix fence and help me, check yearlings, it's probably not a requirement. A lot of times, the people I've hired have been students who on their summer break between that. But that's kind of for a laborer position, right? If someone is interested in pursuing raising cattle as a profession, I won't say that a college degree is absolutely necessary, but it puts you so much further down the road, whether it's trying to get a job and learn, or whether it's I'm coming back home to the family operation. I can bring new ideas. I can, understand new computer programs, something as simple as that.
Truly, yeah.
So I think a college degree is if you've got any ambition, you've got to get a college degree.
Yeah.
And in your experience, because you studied journalism in school, and you are now in a profession that is true to your roots, and so you have experience with that. But reflecting back on your college career, what are some the key themes that stick out to you?
So I'll give an example of how my college career helped me in the cattle business, even though it was a journalism degree.
Yeah.
So when the Douglas County Open Space put out the request for proposal, I was very comfortable writing it. Mm-hmm. I turned in, say they had 8 questions. I turned in a 10-page response, 10-page proposal. And I don't know for sure. I didn't see other people's applications, but I think the fact that I was trained to write well and to communicate well was certainly worked in my advantage.
Yeah.
Certainly worked in my advantage. So that was one sort of unexpected way that helped. So in my segment of our partnership, a lot of what I do is work with the lessors. So the ability to communicate, understand what their motivations are, and help them understand what my motivations are, because the hardest thing is to get grass in a stocker operation. So working with those people and being able to communicate is key, and So I think to answer your question, if I was to boil it down to one thing, what I learned from my education and how it translated into what I'm doing now, it's the ability to communicate. So, yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, and the writing a proposal that, to set yourself apart, being able to communicate, especially in a lengthy proposal, I think that certainly is a wonderful example. And then communicating with lessors. Just understanding what their needs are and saying, okay, well, if they're going to lease this land to me, what do they need to know? And we can, we talk about value propositions, know your customers, right? So much of that too is what's the audience that you're working with? Because sometimes you might be selling, but you might not be selling to a customer. You might be selling to someone who's going to lease you land. So that's a really great tie-in to what we covered.
You got to sell yourself sometimes.
You really do.
Yep. Yep. And then you got to back it up and follow up.
You do.
Do what you said you'd do.
Exactly. It's the other 50%.
Yeah.
For
sure.
And then for, I guess more on the kind of college degree, but a lot of students, and I know like with the agriculture right now, it's moving so much into technology, computers, spreadsheets, things like that. And there are students that might want to get involved or have a future in ag, but they don't necessarily like, working on fence or hopping in a saddle, And so do you think that there can be a future for students that, or in a career that they don't necessarily want to do those things, but they could still have a future in agriculture?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was at a dairy farm once, and I was just amazed by how much data they were collecting on each individual cow. They were figuring how much each cow would eat and then how much she would milk. And there were other things about her milk that they were testing that I couldn't even begin to tell you. But I remarked to the guy about how amazing all this was, and he said, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So that's a huge part to any business, is managing it. And if you can't measure it, you don't know how best to manage it. So yeah, for students who aren't interested in, like you say, riding and roping, they can find a place in lots of segments of agriculture where they developing spreadsheets, measuring the product in whatever form it is, whether it's at a feedlot or in a field, and so others can manage it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great question. And important too, because a lot of the curriculum is changing now to accommodate the needs for a lot of industries needing to measure data, using data. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and on that, with the whole change of generations and things like that, what do you see from your perspective as the benefits that could come with this new generation, but then also some things that you could see that there could be issues that we maybe need to change for to be successful?
Yeah, sure. So this is a tough question. Like, to be successful, you just got to have it all, right? So I think what the younger generation can always bring to any business is innovation. So, in ag, there's just there's always been and always will continue to be a technological revolution, innovation, constant. So there's just a constant churn there. So, young people bringing that to ag is always going to be opportunity. I think I think you got to have the soft skills. You got to be able to, work with your lessor. You've got to be able to, work with your buyer. You've got to be able to sell your product. And then there's some hard skills you've got to have too, depending on where you want to land in the industry. You've got to be able to drive a tractor or ride a horse, or, look at cattle and see which one's good and which one's not as good. Agriculture is so broad. Running a ranch is so broad. You've got to be good at so many things. It kind of boils down to, I can't point to one skill or one, particular thing you need to learn, but more so is a trait. You've got to be willing to learn, and you've got to have the dedication, the self-discipline to stick to it, even when you're building fence. whatever, or for some people it's building fence that they have to, muddle through. For some people it's, inputting their data into a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So you've just got to have the discipline to plow through the things you don't like, learn how to do them well. I mean, that's a huge thing. Just do every little thing right along the way. Building fence. If I don't fix a fence well, if I just get it done real quick, the cow's going to get out again. And so, and if I just kind of throw my weaning weights in there without really analyzing which cow is raising the biggest calves, I'm not going to be able to improve my calf crop every year. Mm-hmm. So it's just that dedication, willingness to learn, dedication, and just doing it right all the time, even though it takes an extra 10 minutes or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a mindset. Absolutely. And whatever you apply that to, it could be, something on either side, whether it's technical or soft, but truly it's the mindset.
And then I guess for in the industry right now, is there an issue that you see that hasn't had an answer, and do you think that maybe the new generation could be an answer for that issue or potentially help it, I guess?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest problem, I think there's two pretty big problems facing agriculture right now, and they're not secret. This will be no news to anyone. The aging farmer rancher. People are just, young people aren't coming back. So I think just to define the two problems, that's one. And then the divide between, we call it the rural-urban divide, but, the divide between the producer and the consumer of our product. I think those two things are the biggest challenges that ag is going to face going forward. That's what I hear most from the industry people. So how can the young people address that? I think you're going to have to be creative as young people to figure out how you're going to get into agriculture. You've got to find a way to get started. But I think there's potentially people who are looking to pass their operation on. Maybe they don't have children. Maybe their children aren't interested, and they want to give a young person an opportunity because they want to see their deal continue. So I think there's opportunity to find those situations. If you didn't come from your own family farm or ranch or whatever. So I think that's, sort of that bravery, that willingness to just step out there and just approach someone and say, I've got this passion. I see you've got a need. Is there something we can do? Can I work for you in 10 years and maybe buy this operation from you in 10 years or take over the lease in 10 years? Or is there a way we can work this out? And then the next step is, the problem I see is the rural-urban, the producer-consumer divide. I think we see a lot of positive momentum in that direction. My daughter's real involved in FFA, and I see FFA as really working that as a mission. But I think as we see more ag jobs kind of urbanize, for lack of a better term, like you can work in an office, and I think you can live in the suburbs and still be involved in a ag operation one way or another, whether it's a big business or maybe you're the bookkeeper for a dairy or whatever it is. I think we'll see y'all's generation hopefully make better connections with your friends and neighbors to let them know that the producers are on their side. They're actually working for them as the consumer. And I think those are the two big issues that our industry faces. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely.
I don't have the answer to all that.
No, understandable. Yeah. That's all right.
Yeah. Can I follow up on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think the aging population we hear among producers is a very big problem. And so, for someone who's getting into it, one major cost is how do I, like you said, pay for the land, like his big capital investment. Mm-hmm. So what was your experience in navigating that part of sourcing capital?
Yep. Yep. So a couple things. One, we don't own the Stalker operation. Welch Brothers does not own a square inch of ground. We run on completely leased land. So that's one way you can get into the business without the capital outlay. Yeah, there's still some capital outlay. But I think to answer your question more directly, so my dad, he's really the one that ought to be sitting in this chair telling you about how to build a business. He had a real strong passion to start a ranch, and he did, and he's been able to purchase land and buy land and really make a name for himself in ranching. As a result of that, we had the benefit of access to, we bank at the same place. So there was a certain amount of security that our bank was able to have both on paper and, just the feeling of security knowing our families that they were willing to ride with us as we grew and were buying more cattle. That's really where our biggest capital outlay was the cattle. And my brother being pretty savvy on the marketing, I think they felt comfortable not, that we wouldn't get upside down on the cattle. Yeah, it's tough. That is tough because if you're not careful in agriculture, you can get upside down real fast. Mm-hmm. And so that goes back to the education piece of this. If you can learn and be comfortable with how to market your animals, how to protect your investments, or your crops, mm-hmm. That's a huge piece of it. And you can come to school for 4 years and think, okay, I should know this now. But I don't think young people should put that pressure on themselves. Mm-hmm. Go work for Compass Ag Solutions that handles all these, that helps you market animals through hedging and LRPs. Figure it out and get comfortable with it, and then you can hit the ground running. So, I mean, there's so many entry points to ag, and I think it's a great industry to be in. It's just I can't imagine a better one. It's so dynamic, so fun, and there's so many entry points. And I feel like I'm straying from whatever the question was.
No, it's all touching on all good points. Yeah, I love it all. Yeah.
Just don't ever stop learning.
Yeah. Amazing.
If you actually didn't mind, while we were talking and kind of on the topic of younger generations, I feel like one of the biggest things that me and some of my closer friends talk about, and in our class especially, is kind of risk management. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, even just going to school for 4 years is a big risk for anybody, especially with the money and really just the overall time. So kind of coming out of school, what would be your steps of taking like a big risk about maybe moving across the country for like a younger kid and, like kind of knowing when to take that leap to that job, or like you said, buying somebody's older ranch? What would be like your best kind of advice on really deciding to like take that risk or take that leap to like the next step for somebody who's like 22 years old?
Yeah, sure. This may be a little bit of a woo-woo answer, but like if you just like can't sleep at night, like I've got to do this. Yeah. That's a pretty good, don't let the fear of something like that override the passion you have for it. If you don't have the passion for it, that's probably a pretty good sign. Hey, I shouldn't take this risk. Yeah. But so that's part of it. The second part of it is put a pencil to it. Figure it out and say, okay, here's how this will work. Here's how I can make this work. Just on an Excel sheet, be like, okay, here's the debit column, here's the credit column, here's where it comes out. Here's how many years it'll take me to pay this off. Here's how many, So I would say do everything you can to, on paper, minimize that risk. Okay. So you can feel more comfortable that it's not a risk, that you're not just stepping out there without a net. And then you may have this huge passion for it, work through all the numbers and be like, there's no way I can make this work. And then you feel comfortable making that decision. So, those are the things I'd say. If it really just grips you, you just figure it out. Just make it work. And then, you may have all these plans on paper, and you get in the middle of it and realize, wait a minute, what I thought is not going to work, but this thing over here, this is going to work. And I didn't see that going into it, but now I see it. So, let your passion drive you, but also don't be ignorant.
Yeah.
Educate yourself, make sure it's right. And in that process, you'll find out, and you'll see other opportunities. And so, yeah, that'd be my advice to taking risks. Because like I said earlier, in our company, like a lot of owning stock or yearlings, a lot of people look at that in the ag world and they're like, no way, that's way too risky. I can't do that. But I feel like we manage our risk pretty well. I don't feel like, we've got huge loans. They feel huge to me, but I'm not worried that we're not going to get them paid back, because we've educated ourselves. We know ourselves. We know what kind of cattle will work. We don't buy cattle that will die. Typically, sometimes it happens, but we've done things to mitigate the risk on all ends of the operation, on all phases of the operation, I should say. So it's just the same when you're looking at a new business opportunity. I don't want to say follow your heart, but start with that and then use your head.
Work that out and then kind of follow your path, and then if it changes, it changes, and you just go with it.
Yeah, everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the mouth, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then to touch more on when we talked about kind of like how we need more of the younger generation to come into agriculture and step into that role. Media is a big part of that, and at least I believe, and I think that shows like the Yellowstone and things like that play a role. What do you think? Do you think that's a real something that could really help push the younger generation and just kind of awareness for this market, and really kind of helping them being like, this is really interesting, this is really cool, I might have a passion for this? Do you think that's good?
Yeah, definitely, and I hope so. Obviously we're seeing a huge resurgence in the popularity of, Western culture, agriculture to some degree, rodeo, Western performance horse events. And so, yes, I think all that will draw more energy to our industry. Some of that, the media's, I shouldn't say the media necessarily, but those shows, their job is to create an interesting story. And so sometimes they don't let the facts get in the way of that. And there's a balance there, right? Like there's a lot of misconceptions that are also being created by these popular shows. But there's also a lot of eyes being opened by, hey, this is something that's not just for old grandpa and grandma to do. This is something that we can all get involved in. So yeah, I think that there's a rising tide, a wave, whatever you want to describe it, that's happening, that I hope young people will get excited about and take advantage of, and not be too disillusioned when they realize that it's different than how it's portrayed on Yellowstone.
Yeah.
And then to kind of expand on that as well, you were in journalism for rodeo for 15 years, I believe you said. And do you think that rodeo would be a good indicator for the future of agriculture? I feel like they're very similar. They go hand in hand, at least for ranching. And do you think that seeing a growth or a reduction in kind of the popularity of rodeo be a good indicator, or it could just be they are completely different?
No, I think they're tied together. Yeah, I think they're tied together in terms of kind of watching that. And I don't have any data on that. I can tell you when I started going to the NFR every year, it felt like back 40 compared to what it's like now. I mean, just the industry that's boomed up around it is just incredible. I just can't believe it. All the things that are happening out there, and I do think that's. I think that's a sign of the popularity of the Western and rural culture. So yeah, it's that, but I don't know that it makes the job of an agriculturalist much easier. But I do think it gives us opportunity to come in and communicate to our consumers a little more easily. There's a little more connection, just because rodeo, is a step beyond it's a step further into the pop culture than farming and ranching is. So, yeah, that's what I'd say. I think it's definitely tied together, but that doesn't. It gives us an opportunity. It doesn't solve any problems for us.
Yeah, and to that point too, it makes me think of just like the culture around agriculture, that, you know, rodeo may be just like part of the culture, but when you get down to business, it's a different story, different than the media portrays, different than this very segmented hobby or skill or craft, even more differentiated craft. And, you know, on that note, too, I was just thinking about, for this, you were talking about the urban-rural changes and this divide in some way. You know, as urbanization progresses and there's this sense of competition for land that would otherwise have been used for agriculture, you know, what we're starting to see is that some of the ancillary supporting businesses, like the seed stock or, you know, the whatever, you know, the tractor supply companies, they might no longer be profitable in their areas. They might end up having to leave. So how does that leave the local producer if they don't have access to their suppliers in the same way that they did historically? And how do you see that those changes impacting, you know, your profession and your industry?
Right. So I think Tractor Supply is a good example. Like, I was real excited when they were going to have a Tractor Supply in Castle Rock, and I went in there. I needed something for my tractor, and they didn't have it. So Tractor Supply, you know, they're actually catering more toward our consumers than us as producers, a lot of those kinds of stores. However, I think, and when we had the droughts in, was it 11 or 12 or 13, when we had those droughts, this became very obvious to me. I was actually writing an article trying to compare what our drought in that time period was like compared to the Dust Bowl. And it was actually worse in 2011-12 for sort of the Great Plains states than it was during the Dust Bowl. And so it kind of stumped me. I was like, but we're not, you know, it's not dust everywhere. And part of it is our management practices have gotten better. But one key that I didn't think about, that I think is a bigger deal than most people consider, is we could transport commodities all throughout the U.S. way easier in 2011 than we could in 2000, you know, or in 1930 or whatever it was. And so we could bring feed to cattle, we could take cattle to grass, and we could just, you know, make it all happen with a lot of ease. So I don't look at what I think your question was as a big problem because of our transportation infrastructure. Mm-hmm. We can get stuff where we need it, when we need it, how we need it. You know, in the old days, I'd have bought my winter protein at the local co-op. Well, the local co-op went out of business 10 years ago, so I buy it from a place in Kansas, and they ship it to me, and it's no big deal. I mean, it's easy. So I do think, you know, urbanization creates some issues. I don't know if it creates commerce issues for the farmer and rancher, just because of how easily we can transport things all over the place.
That makes so much sense. And there's this evolution in the, I don't want to necessarily say consolidation, but there's just changes in the structure of different markets. And then you're able, through transportation or through these other mechanisms, able to get what you need without necessarily having it impact your bottom line.
Yep. I think the biggest issue I see, like, so I live and ranch on the Front Range, and so on my chunk of ground where I'm running cattle, I've got a lot of neighbors. Like most ranches, they might have, you know, say 2 or 3 neighbors. And I've got 20, you know, in 40-acre parcels around me. And they don't understand what I do. And they don't understand when the elk run through the fence and then the cattle come through and knock their potted plants over. You know, they they think that's my fault. And, unless I happen to be there the second the elk ran through the fence to fix it, I can't deal with that. So that's the responsibility I try to take very seriously, is educating my neighbors. And hopefully they'll educate their neighbors and so on and so forth, and they can understand it. But when we talk about the, encroachment of non-ag people into ag spaces, that's the biggest problem. And I mean, dairies have been facing this on the Front Range forever, in California forever. And following that comes government regulations, because the voters, they don't want to smell the dairy stuff, and so they pass an ordinance that the dairy basically can't exist there anymore. So those are the kinds of things that I think, when you talk about that phenomenon, that's where the problems come in.
Sure,
So,
that makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then kind of to ask you, for the next generation, what advice would you give to people in college, high school, even younger, I guess, for getting into agriculture or just into the market industry? What would you say is like super helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I think we touched on it a little bit before, but you've got to have your eyes open for the adventure that's presenting itself to you. It may not be exactly what you thought, but I think my story is pretty indicative that you've got a long career ahead of you, most likely, and you can change within that. You can morph it. So having your eyes open for a great opportunity that you have some degree of passion about, I think is probably one of the best pieces of advice I can give you. Don't pass over an opportunity because it's not perfect. You'll never find the perfect opportunity. You've got to kind of create that a little bit more, and then just the self-discipline to learn what you've got to learn, to perform the tasks that you don't like within that bigger dream, and to perform them well, to do it right. I think those are pretty important traits that you have to hold on to.
Yeah, it's great advice too. You can always change your mind. I mean, what you set out to do is not necessarily what you ended up doing yourself. I mean, I took a card from that playbook too, or a page from the playbook, and and it's sort of the beauty of life. You still learn lessons along the way, so that resonates a lot.
Yeah, and whatever you were doing, you'll learn things that will apply to what you're going to do. So if you're just honest with yourself and dedicated to your growth and trying to do things right, in this country, you'll be good.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Is there anything else, Dr. Chenarides, Rhys, Bob, you would like to talk about?
Any follow-up questions, Rhys?
I feel like we really covered a lot of it. Honestly, I mean, one of the biggest things I want to talk about you is more what we cover with the younger generation. Because I don't know about Hudson personally, I owned a business when I was in high school, which was a lawn care company. And then took a bunch of money, made a bunch of money, it was super good. But then we all decided to leave, and then taking that risk to go to school. Especially for me, I'm not from Colorado originally, anything like that, so I moved here specifically for the ag program. And so getting more into that, I just want to learn as much as I can from people like you, especially who have been through that path. And that's why I think this class, and more so this project, was super beneficial for just everybody involved.
Yeah. I mean, and there's no shame in starting small. You wanna be a rancher. Maybe you go work for a rancher, or maybe you figure out a job that takes care of your health insurance and pays you good, and you figure out a way to own 5 cows somewhere, and maybe after 3 years you're like, this cow thing is not for me. Or maybe you're like, I can't only have 5 cows. I got to grow this thing. I love it. I want it to be bigger. And, little things, whatever you're into, join the local cattlemen's association if it's cattle. Whatever you're into, you also have to network. You have to learn from other people and meet other people, and that's a big part of it. But when you're passionate about it, that just kind of happens because, people will see that passion and say, hey, you need to be involved in our Cattlemen's Association. Hey, you need to be on the fair board. Hey, you need to do this and that. And then all of a sudden you start meeting people, and the next thing you know, you hear about, this big lease that's coming up, lease opportunity that's coming up, and, you've got a relationship with that person because you were friends on the fair board and you had a lot of fun. And although if you can manage to be friends with somebody on a fair board, you're doing pretty good. That's a tough deal, but you know what I mean. Whatever local civic operation you're into, but that's how those things unfold. Just people see your passion and they feel comfortable saying, you know what, Rhys really worked hard on that. Getting the steer barn cleaned up and modernized on our. He'll take care of my land. I think I'll lease it to him.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. Just like I say, you got to do all the little things well.
Yeah.
And it pays off. So sounds like you mowed lawns well. You're able to get your college going.
I mean, if you can do that, and I feel like with kind of your degree is having that piece of paper showing that you can dedicate your life to something for the past 4 years, and really following through with it and completing it is like the most important thing, no matter what you learned along the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, well said. Yeah, it shows a lot of commitment for a 4-year degree. Yeah.
And it shows a willingness, because not everybody loves school, and I think most people with degrees wouldn't say that their favorite part of college was going to class.
Yeah, 100%.
So, everybody kind of gets it, and but they understand that you put in the time. For me personally, the analogy might be, you've shown that you can go to class. So I trust that you can go fix fence because you can do something that you don't love, a small thing, in service of a bigger goal that you have. And so college is not only that. I don't want to reduce it to that by any means. There is so much to learn here. There are so many contacts to be made. But that happens that happens without thinking about it, almost. So yeah, there's a lot of value in a lot of different unexpected ways to a college degree for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Gosh, I guess I could talk for hours. Hudson, we'll kind of wrap it up with you, and then we'll say goodbye for the day.
Yeah, just to kind of overview, talked about your background, kind of your business, what you went through, some struggles. Then we talked about kind of the future of agriculture with the media, rodeo, and things like that. And then but yeah, it was all extremely beneficial, and I just want to thank you for making the drive and coming out and helping us out with this. And thank you, Dr. Chenarides, for your time, and thank you for your insight.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed it. Thanks for making it easy on me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you did great, Bob. Thanks. Yeah. And Rhys and Hudson, well done. Thanks for being our co-hosts today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for setting everything up and making it happen.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Good time. Thanks.